Hey guys, and welcome to Should You Buy It, where all we do is talk a little bit about the game and whether or not we think it's worth the cost.
In this episode, we'll be playing Valheim, the open-world survival game where you have been taken after death to the 10th Norse world known as Valheim. Here you will have to defeat the enemies of Thor in order to please him and earn your place amongst the gods.
So the first question that we always cover in these videos is what stage of development is the game in? And in this case, Valheim is in early access and available on PC for $20.
So what exactly is Valheim? Well, let's start off by talking about the combat, as it is easily the most important aspect of the game. Valheim's combat is easy, yet also very difficult. What we mean by this is that the controls are very simple, yet the difficulty of mastering them feels quite high. The combat takes a rather slow pace and relies a lot on your timing of attacks, blocks, and dodges. The game also includes several varieties of weapons, which are things like maces, swords, spears, and bows, each of which has a different attack pattern and playstyle to them. It doesn't stop there though, as you also will have 4 armor slots, which can give you armor points to reduce incoming damage or give you some sort of special benefit. An example here is the Trollhide Cape, which gives you 25% better stealth.
If you're looking for a similar game to compare it to, it feels almost like the combat in Dark Souls as far as the flow goes. They even add a bit of Monster Hunter feel to it with a dodge roll that gives you a momentary invincibility frame. Of course, I wouldn't say the game is quite as difficult, but it definitely isn't easy either. We died several times in the beginning and even more as we fought the second boss of the game for the very first time. Speaking of which, let's talk about the bosses for a moment. Bosses in Valheim are honestly just really cool. Each one has unique abilities and fights in a totally different way. The first boss you will encounter is the Deer God of the Wild, and he was a bit more than we expected for the first boss of the game. I mean, this guy literally shoots out lightning from his antlers and then tries to run you over. If that's not a lot to take on when up to that point all we had fought were little gray dwarfs, then I don't know what is. To be honest here, fighting these bosses can be quite challenging if you're not properly geared and prepared for the challenge that awaits you.
This brings us to our next topic, which is the progression. Progression in Valheim isn't too complicated, but oh boy, is there a lot to discover. The way it works is upon arrival, you are told that you have forgotten how to make things from your previous life now that you are in the next world. In order to regain these memories, you will have to find items or craft items that are usable in recipes so you can remember how to use them. It basically breaks down to, if you find a piece of wood, then you unlock all the recipes related to that ingredient, such as bows, crafting tables, and clubs. They even have a skill-based system much like the Elder Scrolls games, where you level each trait by doing something that is related to it. These could be things like chopping trees to level your wood cutting, or running to level your running skill, which will in turn reduce the amount of stamina consumed while doing that action. At the end of the day though, this game is progression central. There is so much to progress toward, and even after playing the game non-stop for 2 days, we still have tons of extra content to unlock.
Now for the survival. Survival in Valheim really comes from the combat. I mean, yes, they have a food system, but if you choose not to eat, you would never die of starvation. Instead, Valheim's developers chose to go with a really unique and interesting system for their food. You see, you have 3 slots for food inside your stomach. Each one of these slots can contain one different type of food. So for an example here, say a pig leg, a raspberry, and a mushroom. Depending on what you choose to eat, you will be given a buff for 10 to 20 minutes. This buff will then increase your max HP and your max stamina within the game. Considering everything from running to fighting uses stamina, having a large energy pool and of course a large HP pool will really help you.
Now the world is also procedurally generated. This means that you will always have somewhat of a different experience no matter what playthrough you're on. We played on 2 different worlds during the making of this video, one of which I was able to get to the first 2 bosses very quickly by running there, and the other of which we had to make a boat in order to travel across the sea. However, traveling back and forth across the sea was very slow, so we decided to make ourselves a portal. And yes, portals do exactly what you think they do, which is teleport you from one point to another.
Finally, we wanted to finish by talking about the audio. The sound in Valheim is just spot on. We couldn't get enough of how great it felt to hit an enemy, as it just had a huge impact noise whenever you made contact. Then, when you would kill that enemy, it would feel absolutely amazing as their body would explode into a bunch of different items. The most satisfying of which for me were the deer and the boars, as this game didn't shy away from the damage you had just done to that creature. The music in the game was pretty solid too, especially when you fought a boss or you were traveling across the vast seas and oceans.
So now let's move into the pros and cons section for the video. First up for the pros is the combat. It is a bit slow, but that's okay because it feels very smooth and methodical. You need to actually pay attention to how much stamina you are using or it will easily lead to your death, and to us this is a great thing as you do not see this in a lot of similar games. Next, the game just feels very well balanced as far as difficulty goes. The controls are easy to learn, but the mechanics are much harder to master. As you start encountering harder enemies, you will need to use strategy as well as your knowledge of the mechanics in order to defeat them. After that, we have the progression. Valheim really tries to make you feel as if there is always something to grind for, such as new armor and weapons. Each boss feels significantly harder than the last, giving you the feeling of needing to have the best possible equipment before you attempt to take them down. Another great pro for Valheim is the sound design. An example of this is how every time you swing your weapon, it feels impactful, or even just plain meaty. On top of that, the music score really fits every aspect of the game, from boss fights to even just sailing across the ocean. And lastly, the game just has great co-op. Valheim's developers actually recommend that you play with 3 to 5 players as the difficulty is balanced around a co-op experience. Don't worry though, as if you do not have any friends that own the game, like us, maybe try checking out our Discord by clicking the link in our channel banner, which is located here, where there are probably other people in our community looking for someone to play with.
Now for the cons. First up, we have that there's just a few minor bugs in the game. I mean, it's nothing too game-breaking or anything, just minor things, but there was one issue we had where the boss was just kind of standing there and we were able to pump arrows into him, but considering it's an early access title, there were way less bugs than I would have expected. Lastly, for the cons, we just had that the game is not that fun solo. I mean, the game is clearly developed to be made to play with friends, and trying to play this game solo was a big struggle, especially as you progressed into that mid to late game, as things became overwhelmingly difficult.
So now it's time for the rating for the game, and when we rate games, we want to get 1 hour of enjoyment out of every $1 that we spend on the game. So for this game in particular, in Valheim, we would want to get roughly 20 hours of enjoyment out of the $20 that we both spent. And after putting 24 played hours into this game, then accidentally deleting the footage and putting another full day into this game, we give it 8 out of 10 potatoes.
Yeah, Valheim was a great game, and we didn't even mind playing it twice. Valheim has huge potential to be a great addition to your game library. Since the game is still in early access, there are still a few bugs, and the overall gameplay, if you are playing solo, is a bit unbalanced, as the developers currently have the game balanced for 3 to 5 players. Aside from that though, everything we experienced in this game was great, from the audio to the combat and all the small details in between. Therefore, we feel it is safe to say that Valheim is definitely worth the cost.
Now, if you guys want more money-saving content, consider subscribing to our channel, where we release new videos every single week, where we spend the money so you don't have to. Make sure you guys smash that like button, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.